All right, board gaming enthusiasts, what do you guys think about board games that utilize an app? And Fantasy Flight really seems to be pushing this aspect out on there, both as a co-op piece, an accompanying piece. The app helps you play the game, and we're going to look at some examples. And now apps that are mandatory to run the game. And the new Lord of the Rings game that they're releasing, Fantasy Flight, I'm really intrigued by it. I really am. I love Lord of the Rings, the living card game. I love War of the Ring on there. So it's kind of a narrative that I enjoy exploring and playing. And I was intrigued by the mechanics, but then it's like you need an app to run. So part of me, one of the reasons why I kind of moved into board gaming, started out playing Dungeons and Dragons, moved into wargaming here, and then moved into board gaming to play warlike games when I didn't have other opponents to play. I don't want to say like solo board gaming, but at least half of my board gaming endeavors are solo on that. That's why I love co-op games. And it's also a reaction. What I realized is in daily life, electronics, digital, being plugged into the internet, being plugged into work all the time, this digital universe, which I enjoy. I mean, on the one hand, YouTube and blogs and forums and the ability to communicate and network and enjoy your hobby on another perspective, listening to these podcasts, that's awesome. But at other times, the actual gaming, I feel like I want to disconnect. I want to go analog because the interaction of the physical pieces, looking at them, thinking about them, it forces your mind to slow down. Picking up the dice and realizing the probability of it, rolling it out, seeing it unfold and resolving it, and also being able to control the pace of the game, whether I want to think about my turn or kind of pause. I can pause and walk away and come back. It just, analog gaming, old school gaming, pen and paper gaming, tabletop gaming, physical gaming, whatever we want to call it, it's just a more relaxing pace from that perspective. So now, apps, we're bringing it in. So my first experience with this was Descent. I love Descent. We have the kind of solo Descent where you have the card expansion that's going to take you into the dungeon to kind of escape. It kind of works. But with the release of their app a couple of years now, you can enter in the pieces of your collection and it runs a campaign on there. The app plays the Overlord. And it does a pretty interesting job. It does a good job of it. I mean, some things are predictable, but where it really works is the layout of the dungeon. You don't know ahead of time. It kind of tells you what piece to put out. You put it out and you kind of maneuver and you lay out the monsters and the minions and the bosses and stuff. I enjoyed that because it was kind of minimal. I mean, the app was polished and is polished tremendously, but it was minimal and it was another aspect to play the game. So we had Descent 2nd Edition, Overlord versus players. Then you could buy the card expansions to kind of make it a complete co-op. And then you had the option for the app on there. I could explore out what I already have, but I wasn't dependent on it. And we'll talk about tech in a second here. So then I believe it was Mansions of Madness 3rd Edition or the recent edition. You need the app. Then we have now this Lord of the Rings where you need the app for it to play. That, I don't know. How do you feel about that? I feel, is longevity a thing in board gaming? You know, there's this idea of legacy games, something like Time Stories. And I'm a big fan of Time Stories, and I'm glad they're continuing to push those out. But initially what held me back from Time Stories was you play it once and you're kind of done. And really I get 3 playthroughs. No spoilers here for those of you who are into Time Stories. Time Stories community is excellent about that, and I want to kind of like honor that as part of that community. But I find with each story, each module, I play it once and I pass, fail, eventually we complete it. I kind of see most of the story, but I want to revisit it again and see the other choices and see the places I've missed. So then I get a second playthrough on it. And then the final third playthrough, this is kind of fresh and new, the final third playthrough is where we're playing it with a group, and if I've played through the module myself, I kind of step back a little bit. I will make some choices. I won't metagame it, but it's interesting to see how other players make those choices, what they do on there. So it's kind of like watching that movie unfold at the same time while you're interacting with it. So 3 plays per module as kind of a game you experience, a consumable game. And originally, what prevented me from getting into time stories was I'm going to play it 3 times each module and I'm done. I want a game that I'm going to play again and again and again and again. But then I asked the question, okay, how many times do you really play a game in your collection? How many times do you really get, if you've played a game 15, 20, 30 times, are you kind of done with it on there? So time stories for the value as a consumable, is it that crazy? If you go to watch a movie or watch something online, I don't expect to watch a movie like 50 times. Even some of my favorite movies ever, Predator, I Come in Peace, just how many times have I seen those? 10, 15, 20 maybe? We've gotten everything we can out of it. So I wonder from that perspective, if I chain myself to an app-type game and I play it, when the app moves on, or 3, 4, or 5 years from now when Fantasy Flight dumps it, and I don't have access to the app, does that limit it? Does that limit the replayability of it? That's kind of what I'm thinking. Now, there are a couple of games. Runebound 2nd Edition. Purchased that in 2008. Love it. Still love it. I play it solo. I really can't see playing it with a group or a team because the downtime, the mechanics are excellent. The narrative and flavor is excellent. But as a game that you play with 3 or 4 other people, it's set up that way, but it's way too slow to do it. It's not a criticism, it's just where it is. But from a solo game, its perspective, out of all the games that I own, this game since 2008 has accompanied me the most. I've played it, I don't know how many times, maybe once a month for years and years and years. I'll play it with the different expansions and just kind of, it's the perfect game because the footprint is very small, just to kind of set up, play a few rounds, come back a day later, play a few more, just to see how things unfold on there. So I think to myself, if I bought into Lord of the Rings or a Fantasy Flight game that had the app and it really resonated with me and it's a game that I want to keep and I really want to play, now I'm tied to this tech. And you guys know tech kind of just tech is tech. It's going to be done in 3 or 4 years. But are we still going to be playing that game in 3 or 4 years? I don't know. And then the final piece, I don't think this is that much of a problem. Location-wise, certainly everyone has a tablet. Everyone's got a phone or access to a phone, or your friend has a phone. So you can play it from that perspective. But I wonder how some of these games that are moving to app intensity would work, where if you're at a club or a store and, I don't know, battery issues or just playing the app, table size, integrating it on there. Just curious. I understand leveraging that tech because it opens up a lot more missions. It opens up a lot more rules, a lot more possibilities than just the physical card stock and map stock on there. But do we really want to, hybrid games, I guess that's what it is. Do we really want to limit ourselves and kind of wed this tech to board games as a definitive way to go? Your thoughts on it. But I think Descent is a great example of having the best of both worlds. But now as Fantasy Flight moves into games exclusively where you need it to play, it's not an option. It's not something that you can house rule. You need this tech to make it play. How do you guys feel about that? Especially with Fantasy Flight putting out expansions as they do, which is a good thing for completionists and people that love that type of genre of game, whatever it's going to be. But then you have everything for Lord of the Rings and the 10 expansions, the 5 big box, the 5 small box, they're going to release over years, and then it's done. I'm not that sure. That's why I love Lord of the Rings card game, because at some point when the ride stops, I've still got physical. I've still got the cards. I still have everything I can play, and I can play that like Runebound 2nd Edition, like for eternity, forever.